Then bang after bang after bang, hammering through the smoke. There were small fires now at the front of the building. A man clambered out of a window, scrambled across a balcony, and disappeared into the building next door. Inside, unseen by the cameras, the SAS were going about their deadly work. And all the time, millions at home were staring at their screens, gripped by one of the most extraordinary spectacles in television history. The high drama of the Iranian embassy siege had begun 5 days earlier. Just before midday on Wednesday the 30th of April, 6 armed Iranian Arabs, demanding autonomy for the province of Khuzestan, had burst into the embassy in Prince's Gate. Within minutes, they had taken 26 people hostage, most of them Iranian staff, but also a handful of visitors, a police constable, 2 BBC crewmen, and the building manager. More police arrived within moments, but it was too late. By the afternoon, the pattern was set. Inside, the terrified hostages huddled together, surrounded by 6 men with grenades and submachine guns. Outside, in Prince's Gate, the police closed off the area opposite the embassy, while just 200 yards away, reporters, cameramen, and curious onlookers jostled for position. In Downing Street, ministers and officials pored over their options. And by the small hours of the following morning, 2 SAS teams had moved into the buildings either side of the embassy. They had been practicing for this moment for years. As one told the BBC's Peter Taylor, "We didn't want them to surrender. We wanted them to stay there so we could go in and hit them. That was what we lived for and trained for. We wanted to go in there and do the job." For the last decade, the United Kingdom had lived in the shadow of terrorism. In Northern Ireland, almost every day had seen some new outrage. A young man shot in a pub, a shopping street devastated by a car bomb, a warning that came too late, a family torn apart by tragedy. But in Britain, too, these had been terrible years, with bombs going off at Aldershot Barracks, the Old Bailey, pubs in Birmingham and Guildford, a coach on the M62, and the Houses of Parliament. In the last year alone, the war hero and Conservative MP Airy Neave had been killed by a car bomb at the Palace of Westminster. The last Viceroy of India, Louis Mountbatten, had been killed by a bomb while fishing in Ireland, and 18 British soldiers had been killed in an ambush at Warrenpoint, County Down. Like her predecessors, the new Prime Minister insisted that the terrorists would never win. "The people of the United Kingdom," Margaret Thatcher had said after Warrenpoint, "will wage the war against terrorism with relentless determination until it is won." Yet still the killing went on. So what happened at Prince's Gate was hardly a shock. It was just more of the same. For the next 4 days, as the world's media looked on, the tension steadily rose. On Friday afternoon, Mrs. Thatcher and her Home Secretary, Willie Whitelaw, discussed the consequences of a planned shootout. If the SAS struck now, they reckoned they had a 60% chance of getting the hostages out alive. But even with the best planning and the best intelligence, Whitelaw told his boss, there was bound to be a risk that an assault would end with casualties. Another day passed. Inside the embassy, the hostages waited, ever more exhausted, ever more frightened, their captors increasingly angry at the lack of progress. Just before midnight, Whitelaw rang Mrs. Thatcher. "Everything was organised and ready," he said, "and we're now in a much better position for obvious reasons than we were before." "Willie, I think that's absolutely first class," Mrs. Thatcher said. "I'm sorry you're all having to be there over the weekend." Sunday went by, another long, anxious day. It was a bank holiday weekend, but the weather was unseasonably cool and the roads were quiet. Most people seemed to be watching television. Although the gunmen had now released 5 hostages, they showed no sign of surrendering. Monday came, and the kidnappers' patience ran out. At 1 that afternoon, their leader told the police that unless they let him speak to a sympathetic diplomat within the next 45 minutes, he would start killing the hostages. Exactly 45 minutes later, the gunmen shot the Iranian press attaché, later throwing his body out of the front door. At that moment, Whitelaw was sitting down to lunch at his official country residence, Dorneywood in Buckinghamshire. When he heard that there had been shots at the embassy, he left immediately.